Regreening Africa aims to change agriculture in Africa using trees to improve yields, restore land health, boost resilience, and combat climate change. Current farming methods provide short-term benefits, but often degrade soil fertility, keeping small-scale farmers in a vicious cycle of declining yields and poverty. This impacts all of us. When land degrades, climate extremes hit harder, and ecosystem collapse soon follows. We are all connected to this land. The situation is urgent. We need sustainable, nature-based approaches that work. By introducing the right trees into their fields, farmers are sustainably raising their yields and boosting their resilience to pest and extreme weather. They have new products to use and sell, such as wood, fodder, fruits, nuts, and other valuable tree products. This is an example of agroecology working with nature rather than against her. By combining science with implementation, Regreening Africa helps farmers deploy the right tree in the right place for the right purpose. Over the past 5 years, Regreening Africa has worked with hundreds of thousands of farmers to scale up these effective practices, improving their livelihoods, increasing their resilience to climate change, and restoring ecosystems. These nature-based solutions are effective, proven, and scalable. We have the data to prove it. Our team of scientists work directly with development partners, governments, and local communities, putting the power of knowledge into the hands of those that can use it. Regreening Africa doesn't only regenerate ecosystems, it regenerates livelihoods.
Regreening Africa vise à changer l'agriculture en Afrique en utilisant les arbres pour améliorer les rendements, restaurer la santé des terres, renforcer la résilience et lutter contre le changement climatique. Les méthodes agricoles actuelles procurent des avantages à court terme, mais dégradent souvent la fertilité des sols, maintenant les petits agriculteurs dans un cercle vicieux de baisse des rendements et de pauvreté. Cette situation a un impact sur chacun d'entre nous. Lorsque les sols se dégradent, les phénomènes climatiques extrêmes sont plus violents et l'effondrement de l'écosystème s'ensuit rapidement. Nous sommes tous liés à cette terre. La situation est urgente. Nous avons besoin d'approches durables, fondées sur la nature, qui fonctionnent. En introduisant les bons arbres dans leurs champs, les agriculteurs augmentent durablement leur rendement et renforcent leur résistance aux parasites et aux conditions climatiques extrêmes. Ils ont de nouveaux produits à utiliser et à vendre, comme le bois, le fourrage, les fruits, les noix et d'autres produits arboricoles précieux. C'est un exemple d'agroécologie qui consiste à travailler avec la nature plutôt que contre elle. En combinant la science et la mise en œuvre, Regreening Africa aide les agriculteurs à déployer le bon arbre au bon endroit pour le bon objectif. Au cours des 5 dernières années, Regreening Africa a travaillé avec des centaines de milliers d'agriculteurs pour étendre ces pratiques efficaces, améliorer leurs moyens de subsistance, augmenter leur résilience au changement climatique et en restaurant les écosystèmes. Ces solutions basées sur la nature sont efficaces, éprouvées et évolutives. Nous avons les données pour le prouver. Notre équipe de scientifiques travaille directement avec les partenaires du développement, les gouvernements et les communautés locales. Communautés locales maintenant ainsi le pouvoir de la connaissance entre les mains de ceux qui peuvent l'utiliser. Regreening Africa ne se contente pas de régénérer les écosystèmes, elle régénère les moyens de subsistance.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world, and welcome, bienvenue, at this Regreening Africa Summit. My name is Marie Paramon-Gurney, and it is my honor and privilege to be your facilitator for the next 2 hours. We have a packed program, but before, if you are on Zoom with us, make sure that you choose which translation you want. It is at the bottom of your screen. You can decide if you want French or English. And as mentioned, we have a packed program for today. And it is really for us to take some time, reflect really on what we have achieved with Regreening Africa, a large-scale restoration program over the last 5 years. What have been our achievement? What have been our lesson learned? And discuss how land restoration can be scaled in the continent and globally. And to do that, we are going to take you through different perspectives and dimensions of Regreening Africa. We are going to look at the perspective, local perspective of the value of restoring livelihood through landscape. We then are going to look at how Regreening Africa has been able to scale the restoration impact, starting from the farm to the landscape, to the country level, multi-country, and then at continent level. We will then spend through a panel discussion a bit of time to reflect on the importance of science of Regreening Africa and what it means from a policy outcome and also scaling perspective. We will have a fascinating panel discussion on the implication of Regreening Africa lesson and achievement for restoration in Africa and globally. And then we will have our final word from Tony Rinaudot. So welcome, and we are so happy to have you here. Just some few logistical notes. We are here today with a lot of participants. Some of you are on the webinar format on the Zoom platform. Others are streaming on social media through Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. Welcome to everyone. We are so happy to have you here with us. It is a really exciting time. On Zoom, you can select French or English as a language, as mentioned earlier. On social media, the language heard will be the language spoken. On Zoom, you can post or register your comment and insight in the chat box. Please do so, share what is coming through your mind. What are you thinking? This is really like a way for us to share. On social media, you can register your comments in the comment section with the hashtag Regreening Africa. Then in terms of question, because we will have time for question, if you are on Zoom, you use the Q&A section at the bottom and you can register your question there. On social media, please register your question in the comment section. And finally, for our amazing speakers, please keep to time. We invite you to be as brief as you are brilliant. Then it is a bit of the moment that we want to know who is in the room, please. So don't be shy, share with us in the chat box, introduce yourself, your name, your affiliation, and your country. Don't be shy, just in the chat box. If you are on YouTube or social media, on the comment box, if you are on Zoom, in the chat box, start sharing it. I want to start it in the chat box. I want to start some name. I want to start some affiliation. And surtout, I want to understand where are you from in the world. So please share it. Share it with us. Don't be shy. And without any further ado, I would like to welcome Mr. Hans Christian Strosbol, Acting Director for Africa and Head of Unit for Regional and Multi-Country Program for Africa at the European Commission, to just opening this summit for us. Mr. Strobel, the floor is yours. The virtual floor is yours.
Thanks a lot. And can you hear me?
We can hear you fantastically well.
Okay, that's great. And I'll definitely try to be brief and brilliant, but obviously it's a great pleasure for me to provide a few words of opening at this summit. And I would like to start by extending my warmest greetings to all the organizations that has been part of the program. I don't want to mention anybody specifically, also to save time, but I think this has really been an amazing collaborative effort. Together with our team at DG INPA, I want to congratulate you all with the fantastic work that as a collective you have carried out over the last few years. It is incredible to see what that you have been able to stay true to the ambitions and what have been delivered. For that reason, we are holding Regreening Africa in high regard here in the European Union. Halting and reversing land degradation, all while improving livelihoods, alleviating food insecurity, and fostering resilience in the face of climate change, and to do that in vastly different contexts across 8 African countries is a real achievement. In these regions, where the resilience and stability of communities largely depends on healthy lands, land restoration is actively restoring livelihoods. At no time is this more important than right now. Notably and key to its success, we have seen that Regreening Africa has managed to break down the silos between the research institutions and the civil society. On our side, we will do our best to help you in your endeavor and secure Regreening Africa's restoration legacy. This is in our interest, as many lessons learned from this program have crucial value for our interventions that are tackling complex problems across the African continent in the future. What comes to mind are climate resilience, food security, value chain development, and sustainable land management. Naturally, this connects to our continued commitment to the Great Green Wall. As you will know, in 2021, our President Ursula von der Leyen pledged to mobilize 700 million euro per year to support the Great Green Wall across 18 countries of the Sahel and the Horn of Africa. Within this new framework, land restoration plays an important role alongside agroecology, governance, and capacity development. The learning from this program is essential, and we will continue to be part and it will continue to be part of, and parcel of our engagement with EU delegations working on projects contributing to the Great Green Wall. It is now time for you to look back on over 5 years of Regreening Africa and assess the achievements. And with that, Maria, I wish you a very good seminar and hand back to you.
Thank you so much, and thank you for reminding us of the fundamental importance of land restoration for the resilience and stability of community, and also for really bringing to the forefront the importance of carrying on the legacy of Regreening Africa. Thank you so much. And I would like to call on now and introduce our next speaker, who is going to give us a local perspective on the value of restoring livelihood through landscape. It's my honor to introduce you to Adrian Lee-Toro. He's a co-founder of Nature and People as One. He's the 2022 Dryland Restoration Steward at the Global Landscape Forum and a Charles R. Wall Fellow, a program by the African Wildlife Foundation and the UN Environmental Program to build the capacity of Africa youth to engage in biodiversity policy. He's working towards conserving biodiversity while enhancing climate change adaptation of community in northern Kenya. Adrian, this is an honor to have you here with us, and please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Marie. Thank you for the introduction, and hello to everyone. My name is, as has been mentioned, Adrian Leitoro, and taking it to the ground level, to the community level, from a community point of view, communities, rural communities and pastoralists in Africa are faced with challenges. This is food insecurity, loss of livelihoods, heavy land degradation, and this is due to several factors, including, of course, climate change, but also related to land degradation. And so when we're talking about Africa's lands and biodiversity, that's the biggest asset we have as a community, because it's important for climate change adaptation. It's important. It's a source of food. It's a source of huge livelihoods. And so in terms of when we talk about regreening, it means bringing back what was once there, right? So this is regreening land. This could be for pastoralists, for rural farmers, but bringing back productivity to land in order for it to be able to produce what it used to produce. A lot of the challenges we face now, we're not able to get what we used to get from the lands that we stayed in. So regreening in itself is essentially securing a more resilient future where we've restored our lands and we're getting, of course, food security. We're getting a lot of what once we were getting. From a youth or a young person's perspective, you know, one of the biggest challenges we have is, we're talking about the future, is lots of degraded land. And so we're losing opportunities in terms of job creation, in terms of even earning a livelihood, because most of the lands that we have that once used to be productive is not productive anymore. So for a young person, regreening actually means a thriving, and key emphasis on the word thriving, future for young people and rural and local communities. Securing a future and reducing these challenges and bringing back productivity to what was once productive is critical. And we have to understand that we need to do it at scale, right? It shouldn't just be in isolation. So silos here and silos there. This needs to be done at a landscape level and with the communities that are actually there. Most of the lands that we're talking about are rural lands. And so by actually bringing back these lands, we then, and doing it at a landscape level, like what, it's quite impressive to see what regreening is done, and what is being done is it's being done by communities. So that's the importance of doing it at a landscape level. But then this essentially contributes to what was mentioned before, a healthy kind of landscape, which means healthy livelihoods and healthy sources of, you know, income, healthy sources of our environment is way better and much more secure. And for pastoralists, the communities I come from, restored land means there's grazing areas, which essentially ties down to herders are able to then, whatever challenges we're facing are reduced exponentially by this regraded or this restored lands. So in conclusion, we need such restoration actions at the local level, right? It has shifted from policy to now kind of getting it. We have the right policies in place. It shifts now to the communities themselves, and what we're doing, what is happening at regreening is kind of the starting point. We should use this, whatever lessons we have from the communities that were on the ground, and ourselves who have been able to do a bit of work on restoration to kind of guide the next steps forward towards achieving restoration at scale, taking into consideration the communities that are in place. Thank you so much, Marie.
Adrian, thank you so much. It was amazing. And really thank you for bringing this energy in the room, bringing the youth energy. I think that's really important. And the word that I want to bring from what you say is that regreening is about securing a more resilient, a more thriving and healthy future for all, but especially to me in what you say is that it's bringing hope to the younger generation. So thank you so much. I really appreciate. Before we move, I just want to acknowledge the diversity of our audience. We have now about 500 people on Zoom. I don't even know how many we have on social media, YouTube, but we have people from Africa, people from Europe, people from the United States, from Australia, and it's amazing. And please, if you just join us, put your name, put your organization, put where you're coming from. Thank you so much, Adrian. Fantastic. And then for the next session, and this is really where it becomes fantastic, it's about understanding how Regreening Africa has been able to move the restoration effort and the restoration impact from farm level to landscape level, to country level, to multi-country, and to broader continental level. And to do that, we have a fantastic team of experts from C4, from World Vision, that are going to take us through a little story that we call from farm polygon to continent, the great big zoom out show. And without any further ado, we're going to start with a video of one of our Niger farmer, Issoufou Kandeg.
Ti Mamadou Kande Gomni ay ganda jir wogu cinde fo ay wo hen alfarino kango simiri ay jir bande dini il wona fare goy ko girta bandi gumo dina hene wi heno stoga il wona almiyale yume ngwaro do bankare dini il singu to window murado kulferi almanay mo kangiri ni gayi isinde subu ngwari sise nation sise sajal mano mo koyne danga ganja hamize ni kambore ngay mo koyne isuru tare kala zan kay sibay to irgo no yango ban so wate girguna kan projet foka kasigine Regreening l'Afrique kasigine Afrique la bomu yego bogu aka projet dini aka ga fakare di irwane henal fare ore kay nga fari koyte ini dondolendi e go dini kasigine arena kasigine zamanu zorimo to zamanu zorimo dini e ni dondolendi ndari wana ko tonan kan e turu nyenge kanga nite danga matkaro ngogidi ay banda wona faro e batama aga bogu turu nyongo batama ga yegudu ngono surozena e alamane kanga ka kur farora igite birigi subay kanga funugo kan igete faro se birigi ture mo koyne halaga ka songo e de bortun turi se mataka tun farora de garuno no gete de tandano no gete ne farora no skoy ni nyak fo sino farora sonko ni ndam macha duri wato kan projet man kawo irse ba boko waraka warbo ko waranko cindugu amma songo irigi ni gudu har boko wa ku jirora won mo matakali ne irse na kan ture de da batama bogu narga na kan turo bogu gumo no dino e haro mo ga kan ko ina halaga kasongo ya naga da haro kan almanai mama ka ni dan batama bogu turi go bacarra batama ganda kubai waydini borai iri hansagma akani gungumo iri dondon iri wani ininno goygine yan danga adayan da wakasi gine sekator kanga nan henal forum hagungu goyote iri zai iri wona hame igtubiriga kadai de kambu yango kan iginigidi iri gogini hen tonendi kanga nan ibe kandiri se gagisine hankanga nan labai kay yando hare erena dini imanadan amugoyi im kaga dirise no hare kambu wodi yamo erena amto iri ko dembana.
Fantastique. Et je vais parler en français là parce qu'apparemment, il y en a certains d'entre vous qui ont un petit problème au niveau de l'accès à la traduction en français. Je vous demande juste de s'assurer que vous avez bien coché en bas de votre écran Zoom, de taper sur le bouton interprétation et de bien choisir la chaîne en français parce qu'on a vérifié, elle marche bien. Donc voilà, c'était juste ce que je voulais dire et je vais repasser en anglais maintenant. Mais voilà, si vous avez un autre problème, n'hésitez pas pour le mettre dans la boîte à commentaires sinon. So I'm going to go back into English to just introduce Tor. Tor, you can take over to start us in the great zoom out experience from your side.
Thank you so much, Marie. Thank you so much. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how in Regreening Africa, we have been working on this approach where we're combining citizen science with what we do much more conventionally around scientific research. So as you all probably know, ICRAF is a research institution, but we work in Regreening Africa through many implementing partners, such as World Vision and others, and Ahmed will talk a bit later about the work in Niger. And so, but one of the key aspects of scaling in terms of the science that we do is also around how we collect data. So the Regreening Africa app is a mobile app that we developed as part of Regreening Africa. And it has basically 3 different modules, if you wish, or 3 different components to it. One is tree planting, and the other one is farmer managed natural regeneration, FMNR, and you'll see that acronym quite a bit, FMNR. And that's basically what you were seeing in the video from Niger. And then we also have nurseries, and we also on training as well. So we're going to give you a bit of a flavor here about this, but starting hold on one second. Sorry about that. So starting in Isufu's farm, what you just saw in the video. So this is the boundary of his farm that he has captured together with Hamid and team. The green line here that you see is the boundary of the farm, and this is the area that he is working within. And of course, his farm is part of this larger landscape in Sibiri. So this is Isufu's farm in this larger landscape. And what's so exciting about the Regreening Africa app is that there's not just one farmer using it, but many farmers. So here we have some of Isufu's neighbors that are using the app to delineate their own fields and record various things in terms of the practices, in terms of what species they are managing, in terms of what they're using them for, etc., etc. So there's a rich set of data or information that we can generate from this that then feeds into what we do on the ground elsewhere. So here I'm just zooming out a bit more and just showing a bit more of parts of Niger where this is. But in Regreening Africa, this is something that we have done across all 8 countries in the project. So when you look at this map, this is a map of the 8 countries in West and East Africa. And at the top here, we have a graph that basically shows the FMNR or farmer managed natural regeneration on the right and tree planting on the left. And we can see that different countries have slightly different strategies in terms of what they use. So in Niger, it's predominantly FMNR or farmer managed natural regeneration. And with the app, we've registered about 47,000 farmers in Niger alone, which is an amazing achievement in itself. And also an amazing data set for us to work with to try to understand what works on the ground in terms of restoration activities. For tree planting, we have about 44,000 farmers in Ghana, followed by Rwanda with about 26,000. So in total, we're close to 200,000 farmers that are using this app within Regreening Africa. So that presents a great opportunity. But I mentioned that in the app, we're not only interested in counting how many farmers we have that are using the app, of course. We want to know, we've designed it so that we can understand better where people are planting or protecting their trees. So is it, for example, in their home garden? Is it in their croplands? Is it mostly on boundaries? And how do they use the trees that they protect in FMNR, for example? So is it for firewood, construction, fodder, fruit, soil fertility, etc.? And having a sense of that, on the bottom left here, you see an example for Ghana with the data coming in and for the trees planted and for the FMNR as well on the right there. So you can see what's the most dominant use, which is firewood in this case in Ghana. And then in the middle of this slide, we have a map showing from Rwanda, showing one of the maps of land health, or in this case, it's vegetation cover we're looking at. And what we've done is by building all of this into a dashboard for the project, one can go and interact with these land health maps, interact with different indicators that we work with. And that's a key part of what we're doing, or the approach, if you want. If we're going to successfully restore land, we need to move beyond just looking at vegetation cover. So yes, regreening is the start, but we need to also be able to understand all these other processes. So what is happening with erosion? How is our soil health improving, et cetera, as we go about doing interventions? So in the project and also in our wider work, we combine the use of citizen science using the Regreening app, which you see here in that on the left infographic, with systematic field sampling using methods such as the Land Degradation Surveillance Framework or the LDSF, and the use of technologies such as remote sensing. So it's in that combination that there's like a really powerful opportunity to really start unpacking some of these dynamics on the ground. And then coming back to Niger, just to show you an example of that. So here I've zoomed into a slightly different part of Niger. We're still in Simiri and also across the border into Olam. And you see here a map of soil organic carbon. For those of you that are soil scientists, you'll immediately look at the legend and you'll notice that this is very low soil organic carbon in general. We also see from the map that there's a lot of variation. So even if it's low, there's a lot of variation. So there's also a lot of scope for increasing carbon. And we know that in these particular types of systems, even a very small increase in carbon can have dramatic effects on yields or productivity. And we heard that in the video from Yusuf, where he talked about his yields going up almost fourfold in the last 5 years. And when we go and measure his fields, we see maybe marginal increase in carbon, but still very low. But it just shows the importance of even pushing the system a little bit up in terms of these critical soil health indicators. And also understanding what it is that is driving soil health or the changes in soil health in these landscapes. So one of those things is soil erosion. So this is a map from the same area showing soil erosion prevalence. So basically what the red colors in this, or pinkish colors in this map mean, these are areas where our models predict that there's a lot of erosion. So almost 100% of those areas that are very pink, those particular locations, are highly eroded. And managing erosion, reducing erosion through, for example, tree planting, through FMNR and soil and water conservation works, which is done extensively in Niger as well, is really, really important if we are to build soil health and build the resilience of these systems. So with that, I'm going to hand it to Hamid to talk a bit more about Niger and the context. Hamid, over to you.
Bonjour tout le monde, merci Thor. Donc, comme vous l'avez vu dans la vidéo et aussi dans les informations partagées par Thor, au Niger, nous avions pu enrôler 47 000 producteurs et couvert un peu plus de 130 000 hectares de terre avec les différentes options de reverdissement, notamment la RNA qui a été largement mise à l'échelle dans la zone du projet, mais aussi d'autres options comme la plantation d'arbres et la récupération des terres et aussi les questions de chaîne de valeur que nous avons pu aborder. À l'arrivée de Regreening au niveau du Niger, une des premières actions que nous avions essayé de faire, c'est une évaluation de ce qui a été fait dans les 3 communes où le projet devrait être mis en œuvre. Qu'est-ce qui a été fait par le passé? Quelles sont les stratégies qui ont été mises en place et quels sont les différents acteurs qui ont intervenu. Donc, après ce travail, nous avons, ensemble avec les services techniques, les leaders d'opinion, avec la communauté, essayé d'élaborer notre propre stratégie qui aujourd'hui est basée sur l'aspect communautaire, c'est une stratégie à base communautaire. Nous avons pu mettre en place dans tous les villages d'intervention un certain nombre de comités villageois pour suivre l'évolution et la gestion des ressources naturelles. Et ensuite, identifier dans ces communautés-là des producteurs leaders qui sont nos ambassadeurs pour mettre à l'échelle nos différentes actions et les options de reverdissement qui sont retenues. Cela a été fait avec le concours des différents acteurs locaux, des services techniques du secteur, notamment l'agriculture, l'élevage. Et nous n'oublions pas aussi les collectivités, les mairies qui nous ont accompagnés dans ce travail, parce que qui parle de ressources naturelles parle aussi de la dimension sécurisation foncière, qui aujourd'hui, dans beaucoup de pays du Sahel, une source de conflit. Donc, après cela, nous avons essayé de voir dans la panoplie d'activités qui sont mises en œuvre, comment créer de la motivation pour les jeunes, de la motivation pour les femmes, et de façon concertée, des actions spécifiques ont été identifiées et sont mises en œuvre, principalement pour enrôler la tranche de jeunes et aussi les femmes à contribuer aux efforts de reverdissement qui sont faits. Donc, une des actions phares qui a été menée au niveau du Niger, c'est comment réduire la pression sur le bois de chauffe. Hein, le bois de chauffe est un aspect assez important qui a été longuement réfléchi. On avait pour ambition de réduire considérablement la pression sur cette ressource-là. Donc, nous avons appuyé les femmes à mettre en place ce qu'on appelle les foyers améliorés. C'est des foyers améliorés basiques et cela nous a permis de réduire à plus de 75% la consommation du bois de chauffe durant les 5 années de vie du projet. Nous avons aussi, vous avez vu comme Thor l'a présenté, renforcé les questions de suivi et évaluation en donnant des évidences aux producteurs, en ayant des discussions rapprochées avec ces producteurs-là pour qu'ils comprennent exactement quelles sont les actions clés à mener aussi pour toujours contribuer à fertiliser les sols, ramener le couvert végétal et aussi tirer profit de son champ, améliorer notamment la production agricole. Et cela nous a permis d'impliquer les jeunes dans les questions de suivi-évaluation où nous utilisons l'application Regreening que vous avez vu qui est digitale et nous permet d'avoir aujourd'hui des données assez claires. Un des aspects assez importants qu'il faut noter ici, c'est que on a, à travers le greening, essayé de remettre le dialogue entre le niveau national et le niveau local. On sait tous que la gestion des ressources naturelles est régie par des lois. Donc souvent, ces lois ne sont pas bien transposées au niveau local, ne sont pas bien comprises et surtout ne sont pas contextuelles. Donc un grand travail a été fait avec les différents acteurs et aussi les différents ministères sectoriels pour arriver à avoir un environnement politique assez favorable pour encourager les producteurs et pouvoir aller à l'échelle comme il se devait. On a aussi eu l'opportunité de créer de la motivation en mettant en place des différents mécanismes, quelques simples mécanismes pour encourager les meilleurs adoptants de RNA. Aujourd'hui au Niger, nous avons un concours national que l'État organise pour primer les meilleurs adoptants de la régénération naturelle assistée. Cela est fait aussi au niveau régional et au niveau local et Regreening a été encouragé pour faire ce travail-là. Un des aspects importants qu'il faut souligner ici, c'est la question des chaînes de valeur. Donc, il ne s'agit pas non seulement d'améliorer la sécurité alimentaire, mais aussi générer des ressources pour les ménages qui ont d'autres besoins. Donc, cela a été fait à travers le développement des chaînes de valeur. Au Niger, nous avons 3 chaînes de valeur qui ont été largement développées. C'est la chaîne de valeur des produits issus du bananites, du moringa et aussi du zizifus, où les femmes sont les acteurs, en tout cas les premiers acteurs à être à mettre de l'engouement autour de ces activités de chaîne de valeur. Et aujourd'hui, beaucoup de ménages à travers cette activité a pu rehausser son niveau économique et subvenir aussi aux autres besoins des ménages. Donc, une des actions aussi qui a été largement menée, c'est le changement de mentalité des communautés. Nous avons des ressources qui s'amenuisent et nous savons aussi qu'à côté, nous avons la pression démographique qui est galopante, surtout pour le Niger, les chiffres sont alarmants. Donc, il fallait aussi éduquer les enfants, éduquer les jeunes, éduquer toutes les personnes pour que des attitudes de préservation soient beaucoup plus encouragées et mises en place. Donc, à ce titre, au niveau des écoles, nous avons essayé aussi de mettre en place des mécanismes pour conscientiser les enfants, les impliquer dans les actions de reverdissement, notamment dans la plantation des arbres. World Vision, vous le savez, est focus sur le bien-être des enfants. Et dans nos programmes, on parle d'environ 100 000 enfants qui sont impliqués. Donc, toucher 100 000 enfants à contribuer aux efforts de plantation d'arbres, aux efforts de reverdissement, ce n'est pas rien. Donc, une des actions aujourd'hui qui, avec l'appui du management, est en train d'être généralisée. Partout où World Vision intervient, nous devrions avoir ces éducations environnementales qui sont disséminées auprès des enfants et les encourager à apporter leur pierre à l'édifice. Autre chose qu'il faille bien mentionner ici, c'est cette collaboration qui a été je pense, rapprocher entre la recherche et aussi le niveau local. Donc, il y a beaucoup de recherches qui sont faites, mais comment est-ce que ces résultats de recherche sont utilisés au niveau local pour permettre aux producteurs et aux productrices de tirer leçon et améliorer leurs pratiques. Et pour ça, nous avons eu largement l'accompagnement de ICRAF à travers un certain nombre d'outils, des outils que Mawa va assez développer pour vous. Donc, je vais lui passer la main. Merci beaucoup.
Merci beaucoup, Ahmed. En effet, pour renforcer cette mise à l'échelle des pratiques agroforestières et aussi renforcer le partage équitable des bénéfices sur le long terme et aussi promouvoir une gestion durable des écosystèmes restaurés, il y a des défis majeurs en matière de politique, en matière de régulation d'agroforesterie et aussi en matière de droits sur les arbres, principalement au Mali, au Niger, au Sénégal et au Ghana qui doivent être revus. Ici, je vais me focaliser sur 3 grands questionnements et défis qu'il faille adresser pour pouvoir s'assurer que les bénéfices sont durables et vont à ceux qui font des efforts pour restaurer les écosystèmes. En termes de premier questionnement et défi, c'est quelles sont les réglementations en matière d'agroforesterie et en matière de gestion des arbres dans les champs. Il faut dire qu'actuellement, il n'y a pas de politique, de loi ou de stratégie spécifique d'agroforesterie dans les 4 pays pour réglementer et sécuriser les investissements des producteurs dans les pratiques agroforestières. Par conséquent, ce sont les codes forestiers et les décrets connexes qui sont utilisés pour régir les arbres dans les champs. Pourtant, nous savons que ces codes forestiers ne sont pas appropriés pour la gouvernance des parcs agroforestiers. Le deuxième questionnement et défi, c'est à qui appartiennent ces arbres? Ces arbres qui sont entretenus à travers la régénération naturelle assistée RNA ou qui sont plantés dans des champs individuels ou les terres collectives. Il faut dire que les régulations actuelles se caractérisent par une incohérence et souvent des conflits entre les dispositions juridiques et politiques des États lui-même et aussi avec les systèmes coutumiers et les pratiques de gestion des arbres qui sont pour la plupart fondés sur les droits ancestraux des populations et vraiment les droits des populations aux ressources agroforestières et foncières. Ensuite, les arbres champêtres actuellement et les arbres dans les autres parcs agroforestiers n'ont pas de statut spécifique. Et cette absence de statut fait que ces arbres sont traités comme les arbres dans la forêt et régis par les codes forestiers. Toute chose qui peut réduire vraiment la motivation des producteurs et productrices à s'investir et à investir leur argent dans la restauration des écosystèmes et dans la culture de ces arbres. Le troisième questionnement et défi que je voudrais partager ici est que disent les réglementations actuelles sur les droits et les procédures d'utilisation, d'élagage et d'abattage des arbres par le producteur pour le bois et aussi pour les fruits de ces arbres. Qu'en est-il de la gestion et du partage des bénéfices des écosystèmes restaurés? Selon les réglementations actuelles et en fonction des pays, les réalités changent. Les producteurs sont tenus de payer pour un permis d'exploitation auprès des services techniques de l'État pour l'utilisation des arbres que les producteurs ont eux-mêmes entretenus et cultivés dans le champ. Bien que le permis soit dit gratuit pour les espèces d'arbres non protégées issues de la régénération naturelle assistée RNA, les procédures pour l'obtention du permis gratuit engagent des frais pour le producteur, engagent des frais en termes d'argent et aussi en termes de temps. Ceci peut être un goulot d'étranglement pour le producteur et ainsi freiner le développement de l'agroforesterie. En d'autres termes, les régulations actuelles dans ces pays, à des degrés différents, n'offrent pas de réponse claire et satisfaisante à ces questionnements et défis qui sont pourtant incontournables à relever si l'on veut sécuriser les droits des producteurs et les investissements dans la culture des arbres. Cependant, il y a des cas de réforme politique significative sur le droit des arbres en Afrique subsaharienne et Ahmed mentionnait déjà quelques avancées. Pour le cas du Niger, il y a eu la prise d'un décret présidentiel réglementant la pratique de la régénération naturelle assistée, sa gouvernance et le partage des bénéfices, garantissant ainsi aux producteurs davantage de droits de propriété sur les arbres et des bénéfices de la régénération naturelle assistée. Donc, cet exemple du Niger pourrait inspirer les autres pays, le Mali, le Sénégal, le Niger, le Mali, le Sénégal et le Ghana, à entreprendre aussi des réformes sur les droits de propriété et la gestion des arbres et des écosystèmes restaurés, en s'appuyant sur des dispositifs juridiques favorables qui se trouvent dans les codes forestiers existants pour développer des stratégies spécifiques à la gestion des parcs agroforestiers. Ces pays pourraient profiter aussi des engagements actuels au niveau national, au niveau africain et au niveau global en faveur des solutions fondées sur la nature pour la restauration des écosystèmes, au fait de l'adaptation et de l'atténuation des effets néfastes des changements climatiques. Donc, au-delà des dimensions politiques en matière de droit sur les arbres que je viens de souligner pour le cas du Mali, du Sénégal, du Niger et du Ghana, si nous zoomons dans les autres pays de mise en œuvre du projet Regreening l'Afrique, les 8 autres pays, d'autres lacunes et opportunités d'engagement structuré avec les acteurs et d'influence des politiques existent pour pouvoir adresser les lacunes existantes. Il faut dire que notre modèle d'engagement avec les acteurs, les décideurs et d'influence politique adopté dans le projet Regreening l'Afrique est basé sur la méthodologie SHARED en anglais, qui est un ensemble d'approches d'engagement inclusif, structurées et basées sur les preuves afin d'informer les décideurs et de guider vers des réformes et des décisions éclairées. Ainsi, le projet Regreening l'Afrique a pu accompagner les partenaires dans diverses actions d'influence des politiques. Je voudrais en citer ici 3 catégories d'actions et d'influence des politiques. Premièrement, il s'agit de la prise d'appui à la prise d'arrêtés locaux et à l'établissement des comités de gestion intégrés de l'environnement, comme par exemple la création du comité environnemental dans le district de Mion au nord Ghana, ainsi qu'au Sénégal avec la mise en place et l'organisation du parcours de bétail pour une gestion efficace et apaisée du pastoralisme. Deuxièmement, il y a l'engagement avec les décideurs de haut niveau avec des preuves et des données probantes sur le besoin de réformes de politique en matière d'agroforesterie. Par exemple, notre travail d'engagement a abouti à l'élaboration d'une initiative de restauration adaptée aux écosystèmes du Nord Ghana, que nous appelons NRI, Northern Ghana Restoration Initiative. De même, au niveau du Mali, nous avons entrepris des engagements avec le ministère de l'Environnement, avec à sa tête le ministre pour une réforme de la politique de la RNA au Mali qui est en bonne voie. De même, nous avons plaidé avec succès pour une inclusion de la RNA dans les approches gouvernementales en matière d'établissement des arbres, les politiques et plans d'action, notamment en Éthiopie, en Somaliland et Puntland. Et troisièmement, je voudrais mentionner des mécanismes de création, de mouvement et de coordination pour exploiter les synergies et partenariats. Par exemple, notre contribution au Rwanda à la mise en place d'un groupe de travail à task force sur l'agroforesterie, aussi la création, notre contribution à la vivacité d'un mouvement de restauration des paysages au Kenya, et puis la mise en place d'une plateforme sur les bassins versants et la gestion de l'agroforesterie en Éthiopie. Donc, pour conclure sur les dimensions de politique, il est essentiel de combler les lacunes observées en amont, tout en capitalisant en aval sur les incitations et les opportunités, afin d'assurer non seulement une utilisation durable des ressources agroforestières, mais aussi le développement des chaînes de valeur agroforestières en appui à la restauration des terres et aussi en appui aux moyens d'existence et la prospérité des communautés rurales. Et
Merci
Jalal
beaucoup.
va vous en dire
Merci.
plus.
Super.
Merci.
Merci Mawa pour l'introduction et par rapport à la volet chaîne de valeur. Et comme nous le savons, le développement des chaînes de valeur est aujourd'hui considéré comme l'un des moyens ou une forme d'incitation pour la restauration des terres. Et le projet, au cours de ces années d'intervention, a eu à mettre en œuvre un certain nombre d'actions allant dans le sens de pouvoir booster la motivation à la restauration des terres, se basant bien sûr sur les incitations économiques que peuvent générer ces ressources. Et partant de là, au niveau de l'Afrique de l'Est, en l'occurrence au Rwanda, Kenya et en Éthiopie, l'une des chaînes de valeur qui a été développée est celle de l'apiculture pour la production de miel et de cire d'abeilles pour non seulement le marché local, mais aussi le privé. Et nous ne sommes pas sans connaître aujourd'hui l'importance et la corrélation positive qu'il y a entre la pollinisation et la fructification. Donc, ayant connaissance de ça, le projet a eu à appuyer les groupements de femmes et non seulement dans la formation sur les techniques de production, mais aussi la mise en marché et la commercialisation de ces produits. Comme une option pour la diversification de ressources et en même temps la conservation des arbres qui sont à même de pouvoir fournir ces miels et ces produits. Ceci fait partie de la catégorie des chaînes de valeur que nous appelons des chaînes de valeur émergentes. Et au-delà de ces chaînes de valeur émergentes, nous avons aussi appuyé à travers ce projet-ci des chaînes de valeur qui sont déjà installées, qui sont déjà relativement développées, au nombre desquelles nous avons les chaînes de carité au niveau du Sahel, en l'occurrence au Ghana et au Mali. Le projet a eu à contribuer à la structuration des groupements de femmes qui sont actuellement en train de travailler d'arrache-pied et surtout de voler genre pour la création de valeur sur les chaînes de valeur de carité. Et pour cela, les efforts ont été menés par le projet Regreening l'Afrique en fournissant des équipements de base. Nous ne sommes pas sans savoir qu'aujourd'hui, la problématique majeure pour les femmes et travaillant dans ces chaînes de valeur, c'est la transformation. Et donc, le projet a eu à mettre en place un appui ponctuel technique pour la production, la transformation et la commercialisation, mais aussi le renforcement des capacités sur le développement des plans d'affaires et pour leur permettre d'avoir un surplus en qualité et en prix. Au-delà du carité, il y a aussi au niveau du Sénégal, nous avons, à travers le projet Regreening l'Afrique, mis l'accent sur le baobab. Et à cet effet, le programme a eu à identifier les opportunités qui existent en termes non seulement d'appui à la production des semences de qualité, des plantes de qualité et leur mise en terre, mais aussi la formation sur l'entrepreneuriat communautaire des pépiniéristes et des transformatrices. Et c'est ce qui a été un atout favorable pour la promotion de la qualité de ce produit, mais aussi pour leur mise en marché. Les efforts ont été faits pour la mise en contact des productrices et des secteurs privés pour garantir un surplus additionnel à ce produit afin de constituer une incitation, une motivation à conserver les arbres de baobab dans les champs. Ceci à l'image de plein d'autres chaînes de valeur qui ont été développées, sur lesquelles on va revenir tout à l'heure dans la discussion. Mais pour conclure, je veux dire que pour assurer la pérennité et la poursuite de ces actions-là, le projet a eu à initier ce qu'on a appelé le Forum national sur les chaînes de valeur, qui avait pour objectif de pouvoir mettre en place un creuset de connexion entre les producteurs, le public et le privé, afin de pouvoir permettre une assurance de durabilité des actions que Regreening Africa a eu à mettre en place. Je vais m'en arrêter là et passer la parole à Meika pour donner un aperçu global de ce que le projet a eu à faire au cours de ces 5 dernières années. Merci.
Thank you so much, Jalal. And moving back to English, I think by now you've heard many of the components of Regreening Africa. And if you could just go to the previous one, Tor, many of the components of Regreening Africa. It's an ambitious research and development program that in its first phase has been running since 2017 with funding from the European Union and implemented in 8 countries. It's the slide that you've seen a number of times where we have the 8 countries showing, and implemented by a consortium of World Vision, Catholic Relief Service, CARE, Oxfam, and Sahel Echo, coordinated by World Agroforestry, C4ECRAF. Regreening Africa was very ambitious. It aimed to restore 1 million hectares of land to improve the livelihoods, food security, and resilience of over 500,000 households. And so how have we done so far? What have we achieved? In addition to the value chains and policy shifts that have been highlighted already, and when we look at the next slide, Tor, the livelihood benefits are being modeled currently, projected into the future. We also have some figures on uptake. We have a number of achievements. Tor, I don't know, I just need to see the reach, the uptake figures, the one before that. Hopefully it's still there.
We can see them, we can see them.
Oh,
yeah.
I don't know why I can't. Okay, great. So uptake figures. Of the 500,000 household target, we've reached out to over 540,000. Of those in the areas that we've been able to verify through surveys, we've got an 83% uptake, which is quite incredible in a 4-year period, given that people need to be exposed, decide which practices to take up, and then adopt them on their land. From the 1 million hectare target, we had just under that target reached out to. And that's because in some cases, the hectare to household ratio was a little bit smaller than was initially predicted. Of those hectares that we've reached out to, a very conservative estimate so far is that 61% of the target area has been reached in terms of being in the restoration process. We expect that number to increase significantly as we include communal areas and areas captured by the Regreening Africa app. This gives us an estimated figure of around 59 euros per hectare, and this is in the first 4 years, and as I mentioned, this will expand over time. And then we also have the Regreening Action Index, because we understand it's not just tree planting, it's not just establishing trees on farms, it's about looking at a diversity. What extent is the practice? What intensity is the practice? The diversity of practices and the intra-household equity. All of these dimensions have been measured, and you can see from the baseline on the left to the end line on the right for each of the countries, a substantial increase, showing that there is a diversity, there is an intensity, there is an extent and an equity component in the change that we're seeing. We also wanted to look at the regreening signal, and Tor has already highlighted how the land health dimensions are critical, but the regreening signal was also an important dimension for us to measure, to understand where we're seeing regreening, but also where we are not. And in each of the areas, so this is looking at the app data from all of the countries, we've seen a range from 16% of the area covered by the app up to 48% of the area showing regreening, often in areas where there's been very little happening or where there's tree planting, which seem to be having a much slower impact on the regreening of the whole site. We're seeing a lower regreening percentage. Whereas in areas like we're seeing here on the map for Niger with farmer managed natural regeneration, we're seeing a much higher increase at 48%. So how have we achieved this incredible result? Regreening Africa looked at integrating trees with complementary sustainable land management practices, value chains, policy, as you've already seen. We matched practices to local contexts. I'm just going to quickly highlight a few of these. First of all, in Kenya, we just wanted to highlight that the role of tree planting and growing is important where we have specific species that we want to bring in, and we need to focus on nurseries and the seedling and seed quality so that what we're planting is not exposed to disease, has a diversity and productivity. Here is an example of grafted tree seedlings, which has been an important part of the program. In Senegal, we focused on farmer-managed natural regeneration or assisted natural regeneration. This is our area of focus. It's the signature practice for Regreening Africa and was shown by Issoufou in the initial film. Farmer-managed natural regeneration is really important because it is low cost, it's easy to adopt, and has a high success rate. It doesn't require watering, it's pruning and allowing the regrowth of important tree species, often indigenous in dry lands, and allows for rapid upscaling, and this has been a primary practice, particularly in the dry lands. We also have soil and water conservation, which needs to be a complementary practice wherever there is erosion or water challenges, and this has been implemented as well in many of the countries. And the last practice I would like to highlight is on exclosures. Very famous from Ethiopia, where social fencing is used to manage an area, the grazing and the resource use. Under Regreening Africa, we have tried to enhance the management of those areas and the benefits to the community from the exclosures. In the future, we need more focus on rangelands and other practices. So I'd just like to mention that to reach out to these huge numbers, and Hamed has really illustrated this, we've had to work at a local level, farmer-to-farmer training, working through local structures. Authentic partnerships has been a critical component of Regreening Africa. We've invested a lot of time and resources to ensure that we build trust, social capital, and that we build our dialogue around evidence. Quality data, evidence from multiple sources, from the community, from researchers, from NGOs, and we've brought that in to inform the decision-making process. We've used a particular structured approach for the stakeholder approach to risk-informed and evidence-based decision-making as our way to bring the evidence in to inform wider practice and policy and movement building. So just to leave my session and to finish off this part of the summit, I'd like us to have a look at some of the key messages that we think apply to Africa and potentially globally. I hope that you've seen that large-scale and effective restoration is possible. Strong partnerships are critical for this. We need to work with communities at the local level and match many practices to local contexts. And that means that there is no one practice that fits everywhere. We need to bring the science, the quality monitoring data, and the evidence together to inform both the implementation and the policy. And we need to understand that value chains and equitable economic benefits that have livelihood outcomes, as well as enabling policy environments, are critical so that those that are implementing restoration are benefiting from it. And so with that, I'd like to hand back to you, Marie.
Thank you so much. And all I can say is, wow, well done. I want to clap. I think it's super inspiring and amazing work. I can see everyone clapping, sending hearts. So well done, Regreening Africa team. And without any further ado, I would like to introduce our fantastic moderator, Patrick Worms, just bringing us into a deeper discussion around the science, practice, and policy of Regreening Africa. Patrick, the floor is yours.
Marie, thank you very much. It's such a pleasure to be here 5 years after we started this mad bet of trying to regreen so many hectares in so many different countries using the science that we're going to be discussing now. I'm joined by 5 outstanding scientists. First, Tor Gunnarwagen, who has not only developed the app, but has developed some of the most insightful ways of using remote sensing imagery available to land restoration efforts. And Tor, let me just simply ask you, what difference has the app made compared to all of the other tools that are out there to monitor what's going on? Why is it so useful? Why should farmers use it? And if somebody else wants to use it in Madagascar or in Liberia or in some other, or even in India, for crying out loud, can they do so, and how do they go about it?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, to your last part of your question, it is available for anyone to use anywhere. And as a matter of fact, it is currently being used well beyond Regreening Africa, including in Asia. So absolutely, anyone can use this, and do feel free to contact us for that. I think
so it's free. You can simply pick it up on the Play Store, on the Google Play Store?
Yes, it's free on the Play Store, and we also have a data reporting system that we can register you on, and so that you have access to your data, your project's data. So yeah, feel free to contact us, and we can work out, you know, how that looks. In terms of how the app became
that sounds like an excellent deal. The farmers give you their polygons, they give you the data about their tree, and you feed back information about what's happening on their land. Fantastic.
Yeah, and I think one of the reasons it's been so successful is that we've had that engagement from the beginning. And so it's not an app that we developed in isolation as eCraft. It's an app that we co-designed with all the partners in the project, and also with involvement from farmer groups and so on. So we had a lot of feedback. And in the beginning of the development of this, it was a very iterative process. And I think that's a key aspect of its success in a way.
So it's research and development. It's figuring out how to develop a tool that works for everybody that has to use it. And one of the people who has to use it is you, Lee, because the data that is accumulated, that is collected through that tool, you run through something called the Land Degradation Surveillance Framework. Tell us a little bit more about it. Why is it so exceptional compared to all of these other guys who pretend to use satellite imagery to tell you what's going on these days?
Hi, Patrick. Thanks so much for the question. I'm Lee Nowicki, soil scientist at C4eCraft based in Nairobi. And as we're all here today because over a third of the Earth's surface is degraded, which is severely limiting the Earth's ability, the ability of the soil to provide critical ecosystem services. Now, what we've learned in regreening is that in order to implement restoration activities, we need to understand the underlying drivers of this degradation. We also need to prioritize where to take this action. And third, we need to track how our interventions are performing using key biophysical indicators. So the land degradation surveillance framework starts in the field with the farmers to collect multiple indicators of soil and land health across the landscape. Because anyone who's opened their eyes and walked across the landscape knows there's high variability in soil type, high variability in land use and management. So this methodology is designed to capture that variability, and it's done with farmers on the ground and capturing tree biodiversity, grass diversity, soil erosion, soil carbon. All these data go into a powerful database that allows us to do that very ugly word, statistics. But we need it because that's what we need to be able to show and track changes over time. So that's some of the strength of the LDSF. It's on the ground, robust hierarchical sampling design, engagement with the farmers on the ground, and then multiple variables across space. Patrick?
And as I understand, the land degradation surveillance framework is not something that was pioneered by this project. It's something that you've been doing for over a decade, and that is covering a great many countries. Is that why the data that you can get from combining the field sampling with the remote sensing has become so precise?
Absolutely. So we're applying this systematic methodology in over 40 countries across the tropics. Multiple donors, multiple projects, multiple initiatives, one methodology. That makes this LDSF database the largest georeference database globally of land and soil health indicators, georeference indicators. And this is the power. You can keep adding indicators, whatever you want, but we needed this robust indicator set. One of the key principles, and we've published this, that has come out of the UN Decade of Ecosystem Restoration is the need for this robust data. What has come out of trying to meet the SDGs? The need for robust monitoring frameworks. Well, in terms of biophysical assessments, the LDSF is certainly filling these key knowledge gaps. And now it's projects like Regreening, where we're able to show the value of these data, really be able to have these maps that Tor demonstrated. And remember, when we're tracking changes over time, it's not just about a pretty map, it's about the accuracy. So with the maps that Tor showed, we're actually able to detect changes from 2.8 grams of carbon per kilogram of soil to 3.8 in Niger. So we're even able to track in these low carbon dry environments. Patrick?
Marvelous, marvelous. It's fantastic what you can do with technology these days. Et maintenant, je vais passer au français et j'ai le plaisir d'introduire ma collègue, la docteure Mawa Karambiri. Et Mawa, est-ce que ce type de données que l'I est capable de générer t'aide dans ton job qui est évidemment celui de convaincre les politiciens, les régulateurs et les institutions étatiques d'encourager le reverdissement et de supporter les interventions qui encouragent le reverdissement? Tu nous en as déjà parlé un petit peu et la question que j'aimerais te poser, elle est spécifiquement axée sur la mise à l'échelle de cette approche. Si d'autres projets veulent essayer d'influencer ces politiques nationales en faveur de la régénération des terres, quelle approche leur recommanderais-tu de suivre?
Merci beaucoup, Patrick. Les deux mots-clés que je voudrais évoquer ici, c'est d'abord les preuves et les données, qu'Elie a mentionné et d'autres avant elle, et ensuite les méthodes d'engagement. En matière de méthodes d'engagement, il y a deux approches que je voudrais élaborer ici. Il y a d'abord, premièrement, l'engagement direct avec les décideurs politiques et cet engagement doit être basé sur des données solides et des preuves évidentes, des données probantes sur les lacunes et les insuffisances des politiques actuelles et les besoins en matière de réforme de politique. Ceci est très important et ces données et évidences doivent être mis dans des paquets de telle sorte que les messages soient clairs, courts et concis afin de convaincre les preneurs de décision. Et ensuite, il y a une autre approche qui est intéressante et qui nous a émerveillés, c'est les voyages d'études et d'apprentissage en matière politique. Nous en avons
un voyage d'études, c'est donc prendre des participants et les emmener dans un autre pays pour voir ce qui s'y fait, c'est ça?
Tout à fait, tout à fait. Nous avons organisé un voyage d'études pour des participants, des cadres du Mali et du Sénégal qui ont voyagé avec nous pour aller au Niger, pour aller apprendre un peu de leurs pairs du Niger sur les processus de plaidoyer et les processus d'influence des politiques qui ont abouti à la prise du décret présidentiel sur la pratique de la RNA. Et ce voyage d'études, on a fait une évaluation avant le voyage et après le voyage. Et on a été capable de voir un changement vraiment important dans la perception de ces cadres et des décideurs, parce qu'il y en a qui pensaient qu'on n'a pas besoin de réformes, on n'a pas besoin de prendre d'autres législations ou de changer quoi que ce soit dans la gestion des arbres, dans la gestion de la RNA. Et après la présentation des preuves, des évidences et les discussions avec les pairs du Niger, les points de vue et les opinions ont radicalement changé. Parce que le besoin en réforme politique a été clair et ceci nous a vraiment réconforté dans les messages clés que nous avons partagés. Et vraiment, les besoins en matière de plaidoyer font partie des axes prioritaires de nos interventions dans les années à venir.
Merci Mawa, c'est absolument merveilleux et j'espère vraiment que cet apprentissage qui a été fait par les collègues maliens, sénégalais et d'autres au Niger va mener à des changements dans les politiques de ces pays-là. Affaire à suivre. Jalal, je suis sûr que tu seras d'accord avec moi de dire que l'argent fait tourner le monde. Et toi, tu es le spécialiste dans l'étude et le développement des chaînes de valeur. Alors, j'ai vraiment deux questions à te poser, des questions liées. La première, c'est quelles sont les barrières au développement de ces chaînes de valeur et comment est-ce qu'on fait pour choisir de faire le karité ou le baobab ou le moringa ou Dieu sait quoi? Et la deuxième, une question peut-être un peu plus philosophique. Comment est-ce que tu résous dans ton travail la tension qu'on peut avoir entre les objectifs biodiversité qui mènent à complexifier les paysages et les objectifs revenus financiers qui souvent mènent à simplifier les paysages?
Oui, merci beaucoup Patrick. Rebonjour tout le monde. Je vais peut-être commencer par ta dernière question pour d'abord dire que c'est effectivement une complexité de pouvoir aliéner l'objectif de restauration et de la conservation de la biodiversité, au même moment d'inciter au développement des chaînes de valeur. Et nous avons été confrontés à cette problématique-là. Si on prend particulièrement l'exemple de chaînes de valeur de karité, où on sait que le parc est vieillissant, et au même moment, on demande à la promotion de cette même chaîne de valeur. Et donc, ce qui a été une difficulté, il faut l'avouer, qu'est-ce qui a été promu dans le cadre de ce projet pour quand même trouver une balance entre le besoin de diversification, de conservation de l'écosystème et aussi le besoin du marché pour la promotion de chaînes de valeur. D'abord, c'est impliquer le secteur privé dans le processus de restauration à travers leur sensibilisation, leur engagement et le lobbying envers le privé pour qu'ils comprennent que pour la durabilité de leur business, il faut qu'ils investissent aussi dans les ressources. Et je pense que si je prends toujours le cas de Carité comme d'autres chaînes de valeur, aujourd'hui, le secteur privé, l'exemple de GSA, le Global Share Alliance, qui est aussi une structuration du secteur privé, qui ont aujourd'hui compris la nécessité d'investir dans les ressources pour la conservation de la biodiversité. L'autre question est comment sommes-nous parvenus à ces résultats que nous avons présentés? D'abord, pour pouvoir sélectionner ces chaînes de valeur, nous avons fait un travail de priorisation. On a fait une étude de référence en considérant les travaux qui ont été faits antérieurement. Nous avons également fait le recensement des besoins en restauration et en développement des chaînes de valeur. Et c'est là que nous avons pu obtenir les espèces prioritaires voulues pour les exercices de restauration.
D'accord, donc c'est vraiment un travail en commun avec le secteur privé, le gouvernement et les communautés pour identifier ces espèces prioritaires et aider à les mettre en œuvre d'une manière qui régénère les paysages. Je suis désolé de t'interrompre, mais il nous reste très peu de temps and I need to get to the guy who is keeping us honest. Carl Hughes, Dr. Carl Hughes, is the head of our monitoring and evaluation efforts in Regreening Africa. That means he is the one who's integrating all of the data that we're getting from surveys, from satellites, from land health, etc., to come back with the actual data on how well we're doing. Carl, I have a couple of questions for you. What are the biggest challenges that you face in ensuring that we have clean, uncorrupted data? And what is the best way of marrying the biophysical and the socioeconomic side of monitoring?
Sure. Thanks, Patrick. So I think everyone who's collected data kind of knows that we need to have well-designed data collection instruments to begin with. And that takes a lot of effort and time. So that's a big challenge to get those data collection instruments right. We also need to make sure that the people collecting the data have the appropriate capacity and that they're well-trained, supervised, and there's an intense monitoring system in place to check the quality of that data. So there's a lot of new technological developments. So we can program data collection tools to look at obviously geocodes, but also audio audits, so we can capture and monitor whether or not the surveys are actually taking place appropriately. The technology is really accelerating fast, and we have to keep ahead of the numerators to make sure that we're on top of things. But there are a lot of advantages now. Now, in terms of integrating both socioeconomic and biophysical, what we're all really concerned about is generating some kind of impact, both environmental improvements, but also socioeconomic impacts as well. And for that, we have kind of impact pathways. So we're not going to see improvements in biophysical indicators without some kind of change in practice. So key socioeconomic variables that we've been collecting is the actual uptake of sustainable land management practices. So that is absolutely key. And then many results that we expect on the socioeconomic side at a higher level in terms of improved agricultural productivity depends on improvement in key land health indicators such as soil organic carbon or broader soil fertility and healthier soils. So when we look at our impact pathways or theories of change, both kind of socioeconomic related variables and biophysical kind of come together, and we need to track these along the impact pathway. to see if we're actually.
And so would you say that that is what makes our monitoring and evaluation tools unique in the grand context of all the monitoring that every project is doing? The fact that we can marry the socioeconomic service with these land service, and that we have a constant improvement based on technology to ensure that the data is as clean as possible? And you have 30 seconds to give an answer to that, no more.
I would agree with you. I think we do have high capacity in both these areas, and then we're getting much better now at bringing them together. And I think Regreening Africa kind of is a showcase for that. So hats off to us.
Wonderful. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in thanking my fantastic panelists, not for the panel they just did, because that was a holiday, but for the great work they've done over the past 5 years in Regreening Africa. Honestly, it's an honor for somebody like me to work with colleagues like that, really. And with that, I hand it back to you, Marie. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone. And I must say, I've never seen so much energy and passion with people talking about science, statistics, and policy. So well done, guys. We can really see that it is really a group work and an integrated approach. It's been amazing. On this, I can see that there've been a lot of information. There've been a lot of juice for our brain, and I can see a lot of question in the Q&A and even in the chat box. So please, I know that it takes some time for us to answer all of them, but the team is there. The team is looking at all the question and answer. Please keep your question and answer into the question and answer section and your comments in the chat box if possible. But thank you so much. And we are now moving towards a panel, a fantastic panel with representatives from World Vision, the United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification, the African Union Development Agency, NEPAD, FAO, World Resource Institute Africa, the World Food Programme, CRS, and CORAF, to start discussing about the implication of everything that we've heard, the implication of Regreening Africa lesson and achievement, and what does it mean in terms of scaling restoration in Africa and globally. And what we want to know is what does that mean from them, from their perspective, and from the program that they are doing. So without any further ado, I am going to call on my first panelist, Pauline Okumu. She's a country director, World Vision Rwanda. And Pauline, I would like you to tell us a bit more about what has been the experience, first of all, in Rwanda, and what have been some of your lessons that you have developed or that have emerged, and especially to help us to scale, Pauline. And thank you so much for being here.
Okay, thank you for giving me an opportunity to represent World Vision, to just speak about what we are doing, particularly based on the successes, practices from Regreening Africa. And just to mention that World Vision is committed to improving the lives of children and their communities through sustainable development. And like we've heard, the Regreening Africa project has been an incredible success, reaching thousands of households across 8 countries in Sub-Saharan Africa and contributing to restoration of farmland. Over 75,000 hectares of land were restored throughout Rwanda. Through this project, for example, in Rwanda, over 40,120 households were directly impacted in 4 districts that we are operating in, and more than 15 million tree seedlings were produced and planted through community-based approach. One critical lesson that we've learned is that community-led and participatory approaches are key to the success of large-scale restoration efforts through empowering local communities with the tools, knowledge, and resources they need to take ownership of the restoration process. We can ensure the sustainability of these efforts and promote long-term environment and social benefits. Now, in Rwanda, 3 rural resource centers were established across 3 districts. These will continue to serve as knowledge hubs and permanent nurseries for producing quality planting materials. To scale up this success and practices, World Vision is partnering with other organizations and communities to build on the lessons learned from Regreening Africa initiative. We are partnering with several actors in the field of regreening through aligning our efforts with government policies, such as the forest policy, agroforest strategy, to leverage on lessons learned and best practices from our previous work under the Regreening Africa project. Now, in conclusion, World Vision is committed to scaling up successful restoration efforts in partnership with other stakeholders. We recognize that scaling up successful restoration efforts requires the collective efforts of multiple stakeholders and resources. We believe that community-led and participatory approaches, integrated planning, and the use of technology and data are essential for achieving large-scale impact and ensuring sustainability. We aim to expand our regreening intervention from 4 to 15 districts, that is in Rwanda. We have already witnessed a significant impact in just 4 districts. And with more resources, we believe we can achieve even greater success. Therefore,
fantastic.
We kindly request for your further support to enable us scale up these successes. Together, we can make a significant difference in restoring degraded landscape, improving livelihoods, and ensuring a sustainable future for all.
Fantastic, Pauline, and thank you so much, and thank you for really crystallizing some of the lesson learned. And I would like to call now on Louise Baker, Managing Director at the Global Mechanism of the United Nations Convention to Combat Desertification. And for you, Louise, to let us know, what does it mean, everything that we've heard from Regreening Africa in the Great Green Wall Initiative approach?
Thank you so much. Thanks so much for giving me the opportunity to speak to everybody. I like starting my interventions with a quote. And I found a really good one the other day. It was from the Roman historian Pliny. He said, "Africa always brings us something new." And he was actually talking about hybrid animals, actually. But I love the idea of Africa really as the creative home of new ideas and new ways of imagining the world. And actually what's good about the regreening is that Africa is bringing us something new. So it's regreening as more than tree planting. Historically, always just been tree planting. And it's more than, and somebody used this phrase the other day, which I quite liked, more than carbon tunnel vision. We've learned, I think, in Regreening Africa that, and other large-scale efforts actually, that like land degradation neutrality under UNCCD, it's a well-planned mosaic of interventions that really works best. So not natural regeneration or human development. We need the hybrid. We need natural regeneration, land restoration, and human development hand in hand. Now, obviously, we need this approach because it speaks to the needs of the continent, food, incomes, infrastructure, but also to the potential and, importantly, Africa's own ambitions. In that, I think the Great Green Wall is a great case study, of course. 2021, $19 billion, and 9 agencies committed to coordinate around tools, around methodologies, around a harmonized results framework, around 5 pillars of action, of which one of them was restoration. That needed a programmatic approach, absolutely beyond the Ministry of Environment. I take the opportunity here to say water, energy, and infrastructure critical to the regreening efforts, and of course, national and local leadership. Coalitions at national level that bring in civil society, public sector, private sector, academia. And I think probably my final point is that these sort of flagship initiatives, Great Green Wall, Regreening Africa, over the last few years, this success is really leading to an inspirational movement for others. The G20 initiative that we're hosting at UNCCD is one thing that's got the kind of economically powerful countries in the world interested in this area, and also the Decade on Ecosystem Restoration. In just my team, we're working on projects in Southern Africa and in the Horn of Africa and East Africa at the moment, which hopefully will be inspiring as well. So new hybrids are emerging. They'll all look a little bit different to each other. I don't think you can cookie cutter everything, but that's because we're evolving. And as Pliny said, Africa always brings us something new. So I'm looking forward to wondrous new projects that build on the great successes. So congratulations, and thank you very much for inviting me to join today.
Thank you so much, Louise. And you got everyone excited in the chat box saying, yes, Africa is bringing something new. Africa can lead this revolution and this scaling up. Thank you so much. And thank you for reminding us about the fact that it is a mosaic of intervention. So next, Benjamin Akobundu, Program Officer land, energy and infrastructure at the African Union Development Agency, NEPAD. Benjamin, tell us a bit more from your perspective after everything that we've heard. What does that mean in terms of scaling from NEPAD and from the African Union perspective?
Yeah, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. First and foremost, I'm speaking from AUDA Secretariat. We're hosting the FR100 Secretariat from Johannesburg, South Africa. Under this context, I can say that it is an acknowledgeable fact to know that nearly 2/3 of African land is being degraded, and which makes Africa prone to climate changes. So on this context of Regreening Africa, I would say that the activity is very important to meeting up various SDGs and also in terms of reaching the FR100 objectives to restoring 100 million of hectares of degraded land across Africa. So on that context, to me, it's very, very important to promote sustainable agricultural productivity in terms of promoting competitive food systems and also creating jobs opportunity as well for the rural communities, which is very important, like as we have seen from various presentations that comes up in this workshop. So I think it's very important for us to be able to address the inherent challenges to land degradation in Africa. It requires so many actors and also so many stakeholders and also institutions, also like Regreening Africa, to come in to enable Africa to reach the desired goal. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Benjamin, and thank you for reminding us, about the importance of how it's linking with broader continental initiative and how it can really help to reach our objective. Thank you so, so much. And next, I would like to call on Christophe Bezassier from the UN Decade on Ecosystem Restoration from FAO. Christophe?
Yes, thank you.
Welcome, and thank you for being here.
Thank you. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be with you today to maybe mention what is happening at global level in the context of the UN Decade. As you know, this UN Decade has been proclaimed to address the critical needs to prevent, halt, and reverse the degradation of all types of ecosystems. FAO and UNEP are leading this UN Decade. And we developed a strategy, an action plan to achieve the vision, including building a global movement, fostering political will, and developing technical capacity to undertake effective ecosystem restoration initiative. To support the decade, we have established governance structures, and we have built some task forces, 5 task forces. 2 are led by FAO. I am the lead of the one on best practices. The monitoring task force as well is led by FAO. But we have a finance task force led by the World Bank, a science task force led by IUCN, and a youth task force led by several partners and youth organization. To develop the visibility, we have selected World Restoration Flagship, and in 2022 in December, we launched officially the first 10 World Restoration Flagships selected. The Great Green Wall is one of them. We are working with Louise Baker also to use money from the Multi-Partner Trust Fund of the Decade to support this flagship in the Great Green Wall, but we have other one they selected. Concerning the role of Regreening Africa, I think you are already contributing to achieve the vision of the UN Decade in several ways. First, you are strengthening the regional restoration movement in Africa, and you are supporting by doing this effort in Africa. You are supporting the global movement fostered by the Decade. You submitted at the last call a World Restoration Flagship to showcase and upscale ongoing restoration efforts in the region. You were not selected in the first 10, but you are selected in the list of the one receiving soon a targeted support to upscale and to showcase the good result you have in Regreening Africa. And you will have up to 2,000 $200,000 to maybe collect good practices, showcase your good practices in the context of the framework developed at global level in the context of the decade to collect good practices. So, and you are generating lessons, knowledge, good practices, lessons learned that need to be disseminated to other restoration initiatives. So we would like to use this targeted support maybe to collect properly all the lessons of the initiative and to disseminate those initiatives and good results at a broader scale. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Christophe, and thank you again for reminding us of our line again on this great initiative. I understand that some of our panelists are like needed to go to other meetings, so I would like to call to Martin Frick, Director of the World Food Programme Global Office Berlin. And Martin, if I understood correctly, you are sitting with, and I'm hoping I'm going to pronounce it correctly, Voli Carucci. I'm hoping I did that correctly.
Absolutely.
Welcome. Thank you so much for being here. And what does that mean from your perspective? How do you see using everything that we've heard today to scale?
Mary, thank you very much. We're in the middle of our board meeting of the World Food Programme with our member states. And what is at everybody's mind is the exploding numbers of hunger that we are seeing since 2019. We had 135 million people in the most extreme forms of hunger in 2019. We have 350 million people today. And while we are sitting on a record funding, it is by far not enough. So we do have to address the root causes of food insecurity. And that's exactly what the Regreening Africa initiative does. Now, two things are super important here. I think one is the understanding that we are looking at systems. This food insecurity is the result of many, many failures. But if you turn it around, building food security from the ground up helps managing the complexity, helps to bring the many interdependent parts together. I think a central part here is dignity of human beings. Nobody wants to be a recipient of aid. People want to stand on their own 2 feet, and bringing the land back to agricultural life is doing exactly that. And now if you look at the two big shocks of the last years, the COVID pandemic on one side, and then the war against Ukraine on the other side, that just shows how vulnerable these supply chains are. So if there is a big inflation in your country, if your currency is worth less in US dollars, if prices for commodities are going up in US dollars, then the one who has a garden is clearly in an advantage. Last sentence, I want to highlight how beautiful it is that here is a solution for the global climate crisis, which is becoming every year worse. And I think it's fantastic that some of the poorest people on the planet are actually producing the hope and the commodity and the way out of the climate crisis in a very practical way, while on the other side we see 27, soon 28 years of climate negotiations and emissions are going up. So, as you said at the outset, I took the liberty to bring my colleague and friend Wally Carucci, who is the head of food systems and resilience at WFP, because he's doing exactly what you are aiming to as well, Regreening Africa. So I turn this laptop to Wally. Wally, the next 150 seconds are yours.
Good morning and good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure and an honor, and great to see you again, Patrick, and also Liane, if I'm not mistaken, and other colleagues. Yeah, I'm just back from, let's say, the last year. I've been spending 5 years of my previous life in the Sahel, the 5 countries in Chad, Niger, Burkina Faso, Mali, and Mauritania, launching what we call the Sahel Resilience Initiative, which is very much compliant to align to the same principles that we see of the Great Green Wall, of the, aligning to very much, we are part of the Decade of Restoration, of course, and really looking at a major shift, recognizing that the places where WFP is present the most are also the places that are most degraded, desertified, mostly arid and semi-arid in the Sahel. So how to begin turning this around? Through the help of some of very generous partners, we launched what we call the SRI, Sahel Resilience Initiative, basically working with a package of 5 main activities, largely building on landscape restoration activities, but very much centered on community-based participation, looking at land use tenureship, land use right as well, customary combined with state approaches and, les commissions foncières nationales, gouvernementales et communales, etc. But also really a package of restoration that could really bring back like a transmission belt, a green transmission belt. The purpose that without healthy soils, we don't have healthy diets at the end of the day. So 220,000 hectares rehabilitated, conserved for forage production, mixed farming, agroforestry at its best, including we launched a compost making initiative, mostly self-help, 60,000 tons of compost made by people in drylands alone in the last 3 years. Amazing. And the business now created 3,500 water points over, I don't know how many, smallholder farmers, value chain cooperatives and initiatives. So it works. It can work. And we're seeing figures dropping on humanitarian needs in Niger in particular. So we do have that sense of hope that if we scale up and move away from what has been identified as the 4 main critical issues, as a major impediment, first of all, a lot of talk instead of walk, but also the scattered silos, short-term, and small-scale approaches. This brings scale. So it brings scale using continuums, cluster of communities, each and every one of them with their own decision-making process, but nonetheless connected. The concept of terroir, landscape, territorial units, connectivity, and building upon both what Louise was saying, also mixing a mosaic of intervention, new and old, the Zaipit with RNA, but also with, which is very ancient, by the way, it goes back to the Sultan of Zender, et cetera, et cetera. So we need to bring things together and trying to come up with a green coalition, instead moving maybe from the Great Green Wall to a Great Green Deal, of unprecedented proportions, if I may, be bold enough to suggest this now. But there is hope out there, and no single square meter can be left unattended. So looking forward to continue this engagement with all of you. And there is life, green life.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Martin and Wally. That was really just fascinating, because what I'm hearing is, how do we scale for system change? Martin, as you mentioned, it is about system change. It's not a simple way, and to really scale, we need to take in consideration the different dimension and the interconnectivity between the different elements, from the restoration aspect, but also the human dignity aspect, to the climate change element, from mitigation to adaptation, to the value chain dynamic and component, and to also that idea of innovation, as we've heard, creating a space for innovation which is driven locally. And so I'm loving the word solution and hope, and that's what Regreening Africa is also providing. Is we have all this lesson, how do we put together and how we dream and implement big. And thank you so much for this. And before I move to the next panelist, we've heard a lot, and so I just want to kind of bring out some of the key word. We heard the word that it's not just about planting tree, but it's about a mosaic. It's about that integrated approach, that very cohesive ensemble of different activity, but also of transformative partnerships that we've heard. It's not something that you do on your own, is how do you bring together the different partners? One key point that came from all the different panelists is, how do you make sure that there is co-ownership by the people on the ground, by the communities, by the farmer? How do you make sure that you enable and scale local solution? How do you make sure also that you are catalyzing change of what we've learned of, for example, what Regreening Africa is bringing together? And how do we really now start thinking of really bringing a continental and global scaling strategy. And then it's about also, as we say, the different component. That's the magic of the approach of Regreening Africa. It's not just about planting trees, it's about the landscape approach. It's about the community-based participation. It's about the approach to land use right and land use management. It's about restoration, and it's about the different value chain development. So let me go back to the rest of my panelists. A lot is happening. I can see your question and your comments also, loving the different insights that we're getting from the people in the room or the people on Facebook also. But next, I would like to call on Suzanne Chomba, Director of Vital Landscape from the World Resources Institute. Suzanne, thank you so much for being here with us. And we've heard, so it's not all about planting tree restoration, it's much more than that. And so what does that mean from your perspective, and what do you see us going forward in scaling all of the great work around restoration and what Regreening Africa has done?
Thank you, Marie, and congratulations to the Regreening Africa team. First of all, I miss you all. I was part of you, obviously, in the beginning of this journey, for the first 3 years of the Regreening Africa journey. And most of what I'm going to share here is going to really resonate with what has already been spoken here, primarily because you people have set a record of what restoration should look like on the continent. And I remain confident that the lessons that the Regreening Africa team is helping us to draw will inform other initiatives like the AFR 100, the Great Green Wall. Lovely to see Lou Baker here. And so really just to say, team, you're doing an amazing job. And my heart remain with you, even if I'm somewhere else. So I think one of the key lessons that you've mentioned, Marie, is that regreening is beyond tree planting. Tree planting is an entry point, but landscape restoration, as we've heard, is about restoring ecosystem functions, restoring soil fertility that then translates to agriculture productivity, that then translates to food security. It's about restoring water, streams. Farmers know it. They will tell you in a degraded area, they lose their streams, they lose their water catchment areas. So it's restoring those hydrological functions. It's restoring livelihoods. It's restoring income for local communities. And so those are the kind of ecosystem functions that we should be focusing on. Trees as an entry point, but the restoration of ecosystem functions. The second part is that it's not enough to say we are doing that. And I think that's what the first session, the first panel that was about the method, the data tour with the Regreening Africa app, citizen science being embedded into what I call the traditional research methods, that is demonstrating that communities can be part of the research process, that can be able to feed with their lessons. It's not enough to say we are restoring, we are providing food security, or we are restoring soil fertility. We need to be more transparent and accountable in how we are doing it by developing robust methods that help us to be able to assess that. And that's what Regreening Africa has demonstrated. And that in science, we know the relationships between these ecosystem functions are not always straightforward. Sometimes there are trade-offs and synergies that we need to be managing. So for instance, I'll give you an example, the Grain for Green program in China that was absolutely fantastic in regreening number of trees, exotic trees established very quickly, very good when you look at it in terms of how much carbon has been captured, but had negative hydrological functions, negative effect on water, negative effect on biodiversity, negative effect on food security downstream. And so in science, we know that it's not always, these things are not always working together, and that good restoration needs to be collecting data to help us to understand what trade-offs may be going on and managing them and optimizing on synergies. The third point is, I can't emphasize, is the central and front role that local communities play in landscape restoration. And communities are not a homogeneous group. We have women, we have youth, we have different ethnic groups, we have indigenous people who have different rights and roles in the process of landscape restoration. And so having an equity lens in understanding what restoration is having on these communities in terms of benefits, in terms of rights, in terms of even 10-year rules and access, what Mao was talking about, in areas where we don't have clarity of who owns trees. And so if they restore trees, for instance, in the Sahel, will that benefit? Will those trees then be declared the property of the state? And does that have then a negative effect on restoration incentive for communities? The last point, Marie, because I know I'm coming last and I'm probably just summarizing what everybody has said, is that we really, really need to speak up about the euphoria of tree planting that we are seeing across the African continent, and particularly one that is really driven by exotic tree species, a few tree species. If we don't speak up against it, looking at lessons that programs like Regreening Africa is showing us, this is the evidence that we need to be talking about. If we don't do it, we are going to cause more harm than good. If we don't do it, we are going to start uprooting trees that use a lot of resources in terms of time and labor to really plant. So what I'm saying is that let's use programs like Regreening Africa and others that are collecting the evidence to show the diversity, to show the impact of restoration on biodiversity, on climate, on agriculture, on water, and say that we can really co-design integrated landscape restoration methods with local communities in a successful way, and it doesn't have to be tree planting everywhere that has not been done very, very well. So I'd like to end with the statement that restoration, whatever we do, must achieve ecologically, socially, and economically just landscapes. And with that, again, congratulations to the Regreening Africa team. Really, really proud of you all.
Thank you so much, Susan. That was like so many important points, but I'm not going, I think you did a fantastic job around the ecosystem functioning, and I'm loving the reference to just landscape. I think that that's really interesting angle, and also that data is key, and that it's about the impact on the community and the diversity of the community. So thank you so much, and thank you for the energy. And last point, that Regreening Africa set a record. I loved how you started on this. Thank you so much. Let me call on our next panelist, Laurie Pearson, Land Restoration Platform co-lead from CRS. Laurie, it's so nice to see you again. Welcome. Thank you for being here with us. And so I would like you to especially share your view around the scaling, but also the collaboration around Regreening Africa, and your view around also the use of evidence around this.
Great. Thank you, Marie. And good morning, good afternoon to everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. CRS has really appreciated this regreening experience. And I wanted to lift up 3 elements Marie just mentioned, because at the same time as Regreening Africa was launching, CRS was in the process of finalizing our own restoration platform, looking to really scale approaches, recognizing that this solution is so deep and so entrenched and so linked with climate change that really we need a solution at scale. And so collaboration is absolutely fundamental, and one of the wonderful things about regreening is the way that it brought different partners together from implementation and research, with different ways of doing things and different strengths, and really co-created a vision together and an implementation and action plan together, and built learning and a sharing approach together. And I think that's in large part the reason behind the success that regreening has seen. And I think it's incumbent upon us all now, as regreening is coming to an end, to look for ways to continue this collaboration, but also to broaden the circle of organizations that engage, and to deepen our own capacity to work in multi-stakeholder organizations, because we are not going to scale anything on our own. It's only by working through others and understanding how we can work together. So that's one critical element. Another is the way regreening designed in scaling thinking from the beginning, and got at the systems change that Martin was talking about in his remarks, right? Thinking beyond the 5 years of the project, but really trying to connect to local actors at every level, from the farmers themselves to community officials, to subnational officials, right up to decision makers at the national level. And key to that was the investment in evidence and learning, and the approach that Regreening took to that learning, bringing people together in learning journeys every year, expanding that beyond the implementing partners to really engage local decision makers and to push for the kinds of change in systems that are so essential. And for CRS in our own scaling platform, these are vital elements. It's not enough on its own, but fundamental, and I hope that we can all work together to carry these forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Laurie, and thank you for bringing this key word that often people don't realize how transformative they are around this co-creation and this sharing approach within a partnership, within a collaboration, which can really be a game changer, actually, in terms of moving forward such a project. Thank you so much, Laurie. And I would like to call on our last panelist, Ravi Prabhu, Director General of C4 ECRAF. Pravi, thank you so much for being here and for having the last word almost on this panel, and maybe reflecting also on that unusual partnership as we've heard.
Thanks, Marie, and thanks for your amazing facilitation of this day today. Coming at the end, and it's it's difficult to add anything to the really insightful comments that we've heard before. It's wonderful to hear Susan, who started this journey with us, come back with her positive appreciation and analysis. And I want to start with what she said and then pick up on something that Laurie also said. Essentially said, it's not just about the trees. Actually, it's not about the trees. It's about the people. And I think this is something that Laurie picked up on really well. It's about the people, the kinds of partnerships, unusual partnerships. And I would have to say, since I've been part of this journey from the beginning, it wasn't as if those partners, when they first looked at each other, appreciated each other. This was to start off a marriage of convenience amongst many different partners in many different countries, and it became really amicable and a true partnership over time. And I want to pick up on some very human capacities that mark this. We're talking a lot about data and monitoring and all of that, but essentially what that means is honesty. Right through the project, people were willing to be honest about what they achieved and what they hadn't achieved. And then the second part, which I want to stress, is ambition. This is a wildly ambitious project, and people accepted that ambition required innovation, effort, and commitment. And they were willing to walk the hard miles to get there. Now, whether that's a community member who is learning to use an app on his smartphone or her smartphone, or enter to a new value chain, or grow a new kind of tree, or it is somebody who's at the front of development trying to combine science with normal practice and adapt and learn along the way, or the scientists who are willing to then understand and appreciate that science, while it contributes, must also learn. All of this is part of the journey that Regreening Africa has brought to us. And I think the last word I would say to this is one of hope. That if we can do this in such a way across 8 countries, some of whom were either in conflict or descended into conflict, and despite that, we continue to march on, then I think, given the very, very big challenges we face across Africa, we have and the rest of the world, we have a real opportunity if we join hands in this way. So I want to go back to what Louise said about, Africa brings something new. And I think what we see across this project is the spirit right across the 8 countries and all the partners, not to take second-rate, cheap success at face value, but to keep pushing for real meaningful change. Now, if we take that then Regreening Africa is not just going to be one project, it's going to be a program. And I hear a lot of people on the chat asking, when are we coming to Zambia or Southern Africa or Uganda? I think that's the way we take it forward. So it's been for me a real privilege to be part of this and to see the results as they were presented here. From my side, congratulations to everybody involved in the project. Back to you, Marie.
Thank you so much, Ravi, and thank you for your honesty about reflecting on the partnership and the collaboration right from the beginning, because I think that's really important. And I think the word that you're bringing in what you're describing is a word. It's people, it's human, but it's humanity in that type of work that we're bringing through that partnership, and the ambition and the fact that we have a shared vision and ambition around this. And it hasn't been easy, and reflecting on what has worked and what has not worked and creating that safe space. Thank you so much. Please, everyone, thank you so much for our panelists. That's been amazing. I feel hopeful and I feel inspired and I feel motivated by everyone, and thank you, Regreening Africa, around this. I think you're showing it's possible. I think you're showing how it works. Before I hand over to Mike for the last kind of recap on my side, I think what, as mentioned by Ravi, you can't summarize everything here, but I think for me, one of the angles that for everyone in this room, virtual or not, first of all, thank you for being here, but I think it's that transformative partnership approach, that transformative collaboration with a shared vision, with a shared ambition, that co-creation process that filtered throughout all the different levels of Regreening Africa, from the policy side to the science guys, to the data guys, to the people on the ground working with the community, with the farmer, working with the local municipalities and, extension services, to national authority. It was that all spirit, value, and mindset that actually I feel like you took that across the value chain or the ecosystem of Regreening Africa. And I think that's something that should never be underestimated, because that's what, we pushed you and helped you to be transformative. So, Mike, I'm going to stop here, and really well done. This is amazing, guys.
Thank you, Marie. And we could almost stop there. That was such a wonderful summary. I just wanted to touch on what next? Where do we go from here? So the first phase of Regreening Africa, which has been running since 2017, is ending this week. And this is why we had this event, to be able to share back and to reflect and learn. And in many of the countries where we've been working, out of this work, we've been able to expand. There are new projects, there are new programs, there are new initiatives that have really built on the experience of Regreening Africa. So in each of the countries, there is much more happening. We hope to bring lessons and experience to support the Great Green Wall through a new project with FAO and funded by the EU. We'll continue to keep our resources, our learning, our socials open. So please continue to engage, and we'll continue to bring the remaining lessons and the analysis from the program. We'll be developing a community of practice around key learning questions with the implementing partners. And over time, we hope to expand this out. So those that are interested, please reach out to us. We're looking into phase 2 and where to from here in terms of the important innovations and experience and what would be needed in the next phase. I think we've all heard that restoring livelihoods across landscapes, putting people at the center, takes everybody. We hope that what you've heard is motivating. It has lessons that you can apply, and that some of the tools and approaches could be used in your countries, even if Regreening Africa is not there yet. Regreening Africa has really shown us, and these key messages, these lessons are based in experience. And so while each of them is a phrase, there is countless experiences and examples that we can draw from to show how it works practically. Regreening Africa has shown us that large-scale, impactful, effective restoration is possible, and at a much lower cost than we thought previously. We need to be looking at livelihoods, matching these practices to local contexts. We need to be considering that there are climate, biodiversity, land, livelihood objectives that we're delivering. Working in partnerships, and I think we've really focused on that in the last panel, among civil society, community, government, research, donors, is integral to the efforts and the works and the impact and the sustainability. We have to work at the local level. We have to work through farmer to farmer and civil society. The evidence, the science that comes from multiple sources, from quality data from research institutions, but also experiences, local knowledge, need to be brought into the decision-making process through structured and well thought out engagements. And in this way, we can influence wider practice and policy. Again, people are at the center. If we do not have equitable value chains, livelihoods, policies that ensure that people benefit from their work, we do not have an incentive for restoration. And I really enjoyed hearing this discussion around a system change. Projects are part of that, but we need to look at the broader enabling environment, at the livelihoods, at the access to inputs and knowledge at the local level, to the policies that support restoration and the community level scaling that can bring around a much larger transformation. Regreening Africa has tried to contribute this to the last 5.5 years, and we hope that other programs will also be looking at the broader landscape that they're trying to transform. So Marie, with that, I'd like to pass back to you to introduce Tony for the final closing remarks.
I know this is the final, I promise you, final word. So I would like to introduce Tony Rinodo. He's part of World Vision Australia, natural resource management specialist, famous in terms of farmer manager natural regeneration, but he's also known as a forest maker and has done an amazing work across Africa, especially in restoring millions of hectares of land, especially in Niger. So Tony, please go ahead. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Marie, and hello everybody. It's a real pleasure for me to speak to you this evening. It's been very exciting to me to learn about the amazing progress of Regreening Africa across 8 African countries. In 1983, I worked with just 10 volunteer farmers who were experimenting with FMNR in their fields in Niger Republic. They were ridiculed, they were laughed at, their trees were often chopped down and stolen. The experiment could have ended in 1983, and at that time I could barely even imagine that one day peak research and development organizations would be rolling FMNR out across Africa. From those small beginnings and from spontaneous developments in neighboring counties, FMNR began to spread across Niger at a rate of 250,000 hectares per year for 20 years. By 2004, some 200 million trees had been regenerated across 5 million hectares, annually generating an additional $900 million in gross income, benefiting 4.5 million people, and enabling Nigerian farmers to grow an additional 500,000 tons of grain per year, enough to feed 2.5 million people. My last visit to Niger was in 2019, and I witnessed this transformation of what had been barren, windswept fields across the southern third of Niger Republic, and the reversal of what had been a downward spiral of degradation, of poverty and despair, transformation into an upward spiral of restoration, relative prosperity, and the restoration of hope. Farmers were now able to grow more and different types of crops and livestock, and because of the additional diversity, they were much more resilient in the face of climatic shocks. And so people who had felt like hopeless victims of climate change and poverty had their dignity and self-respect returned to them as they had been empowered through FMNR to actually create the future that they wanted for themselves and their children through restoring their farmlands. To me, actually, the biggest impact of FMNR is not the restoration of trees, as amazing as that is. The biggest impact is this restoration of hope, and it's transformed a whole nation's farmers and their outlook on what might be possible. I wonder what's needed to make large-scale restoration a reality across other countries. Bill Mollison, co-founder of permaculture, once said, "The solutions to the increasingly complex problems of the world are embarrassingly simple." And I think that the answer to this question is also embarrassingly simple. If I could only do 3 things to bring about large-scale restoration, they would be, firstly, to create an enabling policy environment so that when farmers do this work, they have the assurance that they will actually benefit from their work and that the benefits won't go to somebody else. Secondly, I would create awareness of FMNR amongst key stakeholders, donors, politicians, researchers, educators, agricultural and forestry extension agents, and of course the communities themselves. We've come an awful long way since 1984, but even so, there's just so much more to do. So many stakeholders still aren't aware of FMNR, or if they've heard of it, too many of them discount it because it wasn't something that they learned about at university, or they didn't learn it from their elders. So the second thing I would do is to create this general awareness about the value and the impacts of FMNR. Thirdly, I would empower and enable farmers to teach farmers. The amazing thing about the Niger story is it didn't happen because of the experts, the development experts, the researchers, the government agents. The Niger story is a farmer story. The poorest people in the world, the most risk-averse, many of them illiterate. This success story is actually a farmer's story. And so I'd put a lot of effort into enabling and empowering farmers to reach their neighbours. To ICRAF and all the implementing partners, you should be rightfully proud of all that you've achieved through Regreening Africa. My plea to you is this: even though this project is drawing to a close, please find ways to build on the foundations laid and to use the valuable lessons learnt in whatever your future work is. The impact and potential of FMNR is too great, the enormity of the needs too vast, the time to tackle land degradation and climate change too short, and the urgency to act too immediate to just down tools and move on to the next thing, as if you hadn't achieved something very, very special through Regreening Africa. So thank you for your efforts. Congratulations on a job very well done, and I look forward to hearing where you take this to from here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Tony. And this is the end of our Regreening Africa Forum. It's been a pleasure. And I just want to send you back a message to all of you online, on Zoom, on YouTube, wherever you are. This is where we are, and as a collective we can do it. There is hope, there is a solution. We've learned a lot, and let's just carry on, do the great work. I know there've been a lot of questions about document, resources, recording. I think a link will be shared in the chat box, if I'm correct. It's been shared, it's there already. You can see it, so you will have access to the recording and any other potential material. But thank you all, thank you to all the panelists, thank you to all the presenters, thank you to the audience, and it's been amazing, and let's carry on. Have a great day, everyone. Take care.